How to read more. Yes, I know. The world tells you that, oh, you don't need to read. All the knowledge is already out there in the world, and you don't need to learn anymore. You don't need to study anymore. Honestly, the school system almost brainwashed you to really just dislike reading. Like, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth because the school system has told you that, oh, you need to read because we are telling you to read this. You must read this book because we told you to, and then you have to take a quiz on it, and then it's all this crap, right? And so we've been convinced that reading is this painful thing because of the way we've been schooled, right? Because of the like, did you really want to read To Kill a Mockingbird in middle school? Did you really want to read that, or were you forced to read it, right? And then recently, at least, I reread the book. I reread To Kill a Mockingbird, and I realized that it's actually a really good book, but I despised it so much when I was forced to read it in school. And so, to read more, you have to first reframe and understand the problem. The reason why you don't read is not your fault. It's not your fault. It's the fault of school, of the past, of the experiences that you've had in the past, right? Where you've kind of got this negative association with reading because of what school has taught you. School has taught you that you must read this book and you must do it because and everyone else in the class is going to read the same book, and we're all going to take the same test on the book, and we're all going to write the same 1,000 word essay on the book. And as a result of this, you just dread it, right? You absolutely dread reading the book because you're being forced to do it. You're being forced to write a boring paper about it. You're being forced to read it and then take a quiz on it. It makes reading such a chore. It gives such a negative association to reading. And this was literally such a terrible experience for me because in elementary school they had something called AR tests. And basically it was a point system where you read these books, read a bunch of big books. So the bigger the book, so like there's Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, the Inheritance series, these really big books. The longer the book, the more points you got, but the harder the tests were. And so you would sit down at the computer in class. I'd sit down and I would literally be so stressed out. I would literally be sitting there like trying to skim through the book because I didn't want to do bad on the quiz because the more questions you missed on this AR test, the lower amount of points you got. And the crazy part was they made the fucking AR tests a part of your grade. So if I didn't read the book good enough, or if I didn't read it carefully enough, or if I just did bad on the AR test, then my grade would literally tank. So I was literally so stressed about these AR tests. And I cared so much about the points because there's also a competition, right, with all the other students. The person that got the most AR points got a reward at the end of the year. They got a trophy. And so there's competition there. And so I was reading and reading and reading so many books. I was probably reading close to 100 books a year as an elementary kid in elementary school because I wanted to ace these AR tests and to win the fucking trophy, right? I wanted to win the trophy. So I read all the Harry Potter books. I read all these massive, thick books that you would not expect a 9-year-old to be reading, right? I was reading these consistently and studying them to take these tests just for these tests. And, I won the trophy a couple years. I got beat out some other years. My grades were perfect because of the AR tests. But then I got to middle school. They did away with AR tests. And now it was basically on a class per class basis where you read a book and the entire class reads the same book, and then you take a quiz, you take an exam, and you write a paper on it, and you must read the book, otherwise your grade is screwed. You're going to do very bad in the class. You're going to fail because you're not reading the book. And you can't participate in class discussions because if you didn't read the book. And so you had to read the fucking book. You didn't get to choose what book you wanted to read. The teacher chose the book, or the curriculum, the school board picked the book that everyone in the grade had to read. And most of the time, they were pretty good books, like To Kill a Mockingbird, Fahrenheit 451, all really excellent books, really good, like, pieces of literature that will be forever ingrained into history, right? People will be reading these books for hundreds of years, and we were forced to read them, and so we created this negative association with reading them. And as a result, we just didn't enjoy and appreciate them. We didn't appreciate the themes and the lessons and the principles within these books. We didn't appreciate the literature for what it was. And my point of telling you all this is that the school system and your younger experience with reading has brainwashed you and convinced you and helped and created this negative association in your brain with books, with reading. You don't want to read anymore because you used to be forced to do it. You didn't get to choose what books you wanted to read, so you were reading stuff that you didn't even want to read. You're reading things you weren't interested in, and you're being forced to do it, and you had to do it if you wanted to get a good grade. All of this is to say that the reason why you want to read more and you feel like you don't really have the muscle of being able to read a lot, and you feel like you can't sit down even for like 10 minutes and open a book and read, and you feel like you can never finish a book, it's because of the way you've been conditioned. Society has conditioned us to not appreciate books and to not truly learn from them. We've been incentivized to read books, sure, but never has society basically incentivized just the art of reading, just the act of reading, just to read. People don't tell you about it. People don't tell you, oh, you should just read just to read, So I think truly that most of us as human beings and as learners, as entrepreneurs, as content creators, reading is one of the most high ROI behaviors you can do in terms of not deep work, but shallow work. So the work that follows in consequence from your hard, deep work tasks. It's the learning period. It's the learning chapter. It's the part of your day or week or work in general where it doesn't require as much energy, but you're still learning and improving and getting better. And the reason why I say this is because a book is literally somebody's life's work. When you read a book, it is literally something that someone poured years, if not decades, into writing. It's a distillation of everything they've learned in their life, their passions, their purpose, their expertise, all into something that you can consume in the span of a few days. You can learn all of that. You can learn literally an entire lifetime's worth of knowledge in a couple hundred pages. That is extraordinary. That is genuinely magical. It's on par with the internet, I'd say. You can learn a lot on YouTube. You can learn a lot through online courses. But the amount you can and like there's so much knowledge online, right? But the amount you can learn from a single book, that's incomparable, right? It's a different level, right? They're both immense amounts of knowledge that you can capture from the internet, but there's a different level of nuance you can get from a book. It's someone's life's work, And that's fucking beautiful. There's so much you can learn from that. And so when you're able to reframe reading not as this thing you have to do or a self-improvement thing, like don't read to just self-improve. Yes, you will get better. Yes, you will learn stuff. But I like the way Naval Ravikant frames reading. He reads out of curiosity, purely out of curiosity. He reads shit that he wants to read. He doesn't force himself to read all the popular self-help books just because everyone else told him to read it. He reads books that piques his interest. And if a book doesn't pique his interest, like if he opens and he reads the first couple pages and it's boring, he skims. He skims through the rest of the book, or he just puts it down. And maybe he picks it up later in life whenever the time is more aligned. And so instead of just consuming books for some kind of outcome, instead of reading books for a goal, like to learn something or for some kind of exterior motive, Read out of curiosity. Read to learn and to experience and be a part of someone's life's work, you know? Read to read, man. The side effect of reading is learning. It should not be the goal. Your curiosity should be the goal. And when you frame it that way, reading becomes this almost pleasurable thing. It's not a chore, you know? You're not reading for a grade. You're not reading to write a paper. You're not reading to self-improve. You're just reading because you want to fucking read. And trust me, whenever you're able to reach that level where you're automatically just learning by consequence and you read genuinely because you want to read and to satisfy your curiosity, that is powerful. You don't even have to force yourself. You just want to read. You want to do this thing. You want to have this good habit. And trust me, it is one of the most powerful habits that you can have to just fucking read, dude. Like, not enough people in this world read books anymore. So if you are able to be that person, then you put yourself so much farther ahead. And some ways you can minimize the friction between, like, you know, reading books is get a fucking Kindle. And the reason why I say that, I mean, Kindles are kind of expensive, but it's worth the investment. So worth. The reason I say that is because whenever you read a physical book, I know some people like the feeling of a hardcover and like the paper and turning the page, but for the most part, for most people, you don't need the physical book. And the physical book it just adds more complexity, right? It adds more friction. You have to carry the fucking thing, you gotta lug it around, you gotta hold it and turn the page, you have to have a bookmark, yada yada yada. You have to like physically hold the thing. You have to physically go out and buy it. Right? It's like a physical thing, which I think there's value to a physical book, for sure. But the reason why I say get a Kindle is because of convenience. Right? You can have thousands of books in your fucking pocket. You can't carry around 1,000 physical books. But you can carry on a library of every single book, most books ever written on one device, and you don't have to actually spend as much money because Kindle books are cheaper, so you can have more books, you can read more at a higher convenience without spending as much money. Yeah, a Kindle is one of the best investments you can make, especially when it comes to building the muscle and establishing the habit of reading more. It just reduces the friction, it reduces the complexity. And the last thing I'll leave you with, the final principle, is to read what you want to read. Okay? It's not complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's quite simply, the more you read something that you're disinterested in, the less likely you are to keep reading, the less likely you are to build the muscle. But the moment you pick up a book that you don't want to put down, that is whenever you build the muscle. That's when you start to fall in love with not just self-improvement reading or, you know, outcome-based reading. You're reading just because you just love reading. You just love the author. You love the book itself. You love and you're trying to just satisfy your curiosity, essentially. That's why you read. You know, you're not reading because you want to achieve something. You're just doing it because it satisfies your curiosity, and by consequence, you achieve this higher level of knowledge where you understand that this is what I want to do, and by consequence, you learn and you get better as a result. How to read more simply boils down to understanding the fact that your life and the influences upon your life and your experiences are not conducive to reading, but you need to reframe the problem as not your fault, but something that you genuinely need to build the skill of. You need to build the skill and the habit of reading. You need to build the muscle of loving reading for what it is, for satisfying your curiosity, and reading what you want to read, getting the Kindle, making it as easy as possible to read, you know? Read stuff that you want to read, and it'll be so much easier to read more and to learn and have this skill that society doesn't value anymore because it's trying to convince you that reading isn't important. that you only need to read if you want to improve or learn a skill. No, read for your curiosity, and trust me, you'll learn so much more. Goodbye.